Yes, Sasha, thanks a lot for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to talk at the end of such a marvelous and inspiring conference. And now I have the impression what I want to say is either totally different from what we are discussing, or it's just in the core, in the center of what we do. So that's great, and I do not know how you will receive it. Maybe you have the impression there's a third way. It's either one or the other. My title is Between Religious Extremism and Secularization. I'm a theologist, responsible for religious education, and one thing which touches us in a moment very heavily, that's on the one side, in the Western societies at least, that there is a decline of being Christian. Sasha, I have 15 minutes or a few minutes?
It's not freely because we are liking lectures, so go ahead. Maybe 20 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, so just to know how much story I put in between. The decline of Christianity is, of course, important. We see a reduction of our students. And on the other hand, we are confronted with all this extremist behavior, which is based on somehow on religion. And originally I had the title In the Eye of the Hurricane. So to see that there's a difference. And then I realized a little bit later, or a little bit too late, but it was just the right moment, that the title of the conference is Neuroscience of Religion. And that brought me to the idea, oh yes, that's very close to that what we do in our research. Rüdiger Seitz presented in his first presentation, gave a little insight what we do with the topic which you probably might have heard so far, Credition. And so I said, oh yeah, it's good, I can combine all this in 15 minutes, it's great. And the helping aspect was the subtitle of this conference, Bridging the Troubled Waters. And I love this, and I think the discussion here was always about this bridging and about these troubled waters. And I have two parts. Part one is the role of Credition. Well, it's not so easy to start. Maybe it's like this. I saw it's not one troubled water. There are two waters, two rivers, which are not connected at all. What's religion, what's neuroscience? And I remember yesterday there was a discussion, what can tell us neuroscience for religion, and what can religion have bring impacts to neuroscience. And there was at least an agreement, one might answer nothing. There is no relation, so that I think that's the point. And you have, of course, troubled waters within neuroscience. You have very different approaches. We have the same in religion. We have very different approaches. So you can bridge both rivers, but nevertheless they cannot be brought together. And that was my triggering point to say yes. Credition, what we were speaking about, that might be the bridge between both troubled waters. I recall a little bit what Rüdiger Seitz told yesterday. Tradition is derived from the Latin credere, believe, to believe, and one of the originating ideas was tradition is a concept that is related to cognition and emotion. Tradition didn't exist in the literature until a few years ago, and meanwhile we are so bold to say, or especially the neuroscientists are so bold to say, believing. Now I changed from belief to believing. That's a difference. In German we cannot say. We have no German term for believing. So that's a difficulty as well. Believing is a brain function. If that's right, then it's a brain function which was not addressed so far. And if that's right, what can we learn from understanding this brain function of believing, which contributes at the end to the existence of beliefs? That's one aspect. And when we speak about beliefs, we speak normally about nouns. We have a belief, but now we have believing this process down in our brain, in our body, and whatever. And so we have a philosophical problem. We have terms which cannot be related to the neuroscientific processes, and we have neuroscientific processes which cannot be explained in a way that they fit completely together with everyday understanding of words like belief or emotion and so on. Okay, nevertheless, I cannot go into the details of Credition, and therefore I was happy that we could do it jointly, that Rüdiger Seitz started yesterday with a short introduction of the believing process understood as a brain function. And so I'm a little bit more on a hermeneutic way to make understandable how this idea of this concept of Credition might contribute to set the problem, religious extremism, secularization, and what you told today, it fits exactly into this field. So yeah, Credition. So what's Credition? I recondition one to bridging knowledge about religion. And bridging means this bridging troubled waters. Recondition one to bridging is knowledge about Credition. Credition is mainly located in neuroscience, and there we have all the issues of philosophy of neuroscience and neurophilosophy, or however it might be called. But nevertheless, we have neuroscientific approaches to these processes of belief. This slide you saw yesterday, and that makes clear we have neuroscientific approaches to Credition. And now on the other side, neuroscience of religion. Well, that's my field. And what's religion? We have a clear understanding that's the synagogue in Prague, so Judaism is, that's Regensburg, the Cathedral of Regensburg where I studied, Christian, and then we have a mosque in Baghdad, and then we have a temple in China. All this is religion, and nothing of all this has to do with neuroscience. So, is religion really the good opposite part for bridging? And I would say, no, it's not. What's the place here that should be religiosity? When we speak about neuroscience, we can speak about religiosity in the sense of a human attitude, of a personality trait, or whatever. But that's a difference to speak about religion or to speak about religiosity. Now we have again a semantic problem, because in English, our English colleagues tell us religiosity is not a very common term, and it's not a familiar term, and even in science it started only, let's say, about 15-20 years that religiosity appeared in the publications. What is religiosity? In German, the term is not so negative as it might be in English. And I think in Italian it's not so negative as well, but in French it's terrible. Religiosity, that's nothing. So the condition 3 to bridging would be understanding, have knowledge about religiosity. And as far as I know, you may correct me, and if you have some ideas, my students are always told I pay you a cup of coffee if you give me a hint that that I am wrong on this point. As far as I know, we do not have any comprehensive definition of religiosity. We have many definitions. Religiosity means to behave in a religious way or something like this, but that's tautology. And I do not know any definition of religiosity, and we do not use it. And therefore we have a problem, but if we have religiosity, then we have the prerequisite to understand what is the religious belief, because it's no mosque and no cathedral have any belief, and no religion has any belief. But in religiosity, individuals may have religious beliefs. Therefore, they have beliefs, and these beliefs also can be agnostic, whether religious or not. We always are in the field of anthropology. And to make these two steps, exchange understanding religion as brain function and exchange religion by religiosity, would bring the correct level. We have 25 definitions of level I learned yesterday, so nevertheless I take the 26th one. So we have the same level to combine or to bridge neuroscience of religion, and I therefore would say much more neuroscience of religiosity. But you wouldn't have any attraction for a conference neuroscience of religiosity. That's clear. But again, that's the condition to understand extremist religious behavior. Extremist religious behavior has almost nothing to do with religions, because you can come from every religion and produce extremist behavior. And within every religion you have extremist and non-extremist behavior. So it's not religion which produces, but it's the way how individuals shape their religiosity. And therefore you can also have secular religious, secular extremist beliefs. Okay, so far that was the first part, speaking about tradition. And of course, I know it's impossible to understand really what tradition is, and even after the talk of Rüdiger yesterday, it's only a very, very short first smell or taste what it can be. But now it's not less problematic if we go to the religious semantic and combine it with the question of extremism. My students know that's my favorite topic, and I met some of them 20 years later, and they said, oh, what I really remember, that's what I tell you now. They only actually forgot. So it's good at least one point. So, and when we had lectures from outside, guest lectures, I very often told my students, take a sheet of paper, write religion, religious, and religiosity, and just count while the lecturers are talking, count how often, because it's in the field of theology, how often they use the term religion and how often they use the term religious and religiosity. And we did it very often. And I think in Croatia it's like this. And I have a doctorate student who is Croatian, and I asked him, yes, but how do you pronounce it?
Religion.
Yeah, that might be something like spirituality, so you should explain, but doesn't matter. In English it's even more problematic, because we have religiosity, we have spirituality, or we even have religiousness in this field. Okay, but can you imagine how it looks like when the students come after the talk and show their paper? It's always like this. Religiosity isn't used, but the main term which is used in such talks is religious, the adjective. And therefore it's an example for the normal distribution of these terms. And I would say it's an example for a normal misconception of language use. Why this? If you have a look on this, religious is an adjective. And we in theology are trained a lot with the linguistic and semantic problems, and it was nice for me to hear when you come into the practical field of philosophy, it's not irrelevant. If you just give your students definitions, then they know how many different definitions, but in the practical sense, and as you were thinking when he explained your question, it's not irrelevant. Even if we know we cannot solve it. That's another question. Okay, but we have here an adjective, and then we have two substantives, two nouns. And that's a categorical difference. It's not the same, and it's again a problem because this adjective religious, I call it's mutilated because we do not use the substantive religiosity. And therefore we have a bias when you speak about religious, bias to religions and not to religiosity. And in the discussion of religious extremism or in secularization, this problem is really a strong one, because we think then religious extremism is Islam or whatever. So it comes very quickly become to religion. And so we can say the normal language use is like this. Tradition can only be related to religiosity, but our normal language use is like this. Religion is very big, and when we speak about religious experiences, we always have religion. There is no trigger point for tradition, and that's one of the big problems within theology, because I first have to say we should have a theory of religiosity to make understandable why tradition is relevant. Okay, you see there's a question of bridging here. Okay, if we have it like this, then we can say tradition influences how individuals develop their religiosity. Tradition are part of these processes as brain function. They influence how individuals develop their religiosity by accessing what religions provide. So that's individuals who take puzzles, little pieces of religions, and say that's relevant for my religiosity. And this will result in their individual religious beliefs. So that's a process when religiosity goes to religion. Yeah, okay, coming to religious extremist beliefs. Why this? And that's of course a kind of meaning of life, and therefore I just take this part from Rüdiger yesterday, which was discussed and we can discuss. If you have as part of your meaning of life a fundamentalist view coming from religion, then you can say religions postulate positioning against the sinning world. And many individuals have this way of picking out pieces of religions. You can come to the aspect of extremists, and then religions postulate extreme acting against the sinning world. That's in the legal case I discussed with our legal colleagues that be careful. Extremist behavior is not illegal. So, but where is the difference? And the big difference is being violent. And so it touches really your last talk. And then you can say religions postulate dying in a fight against the sinning world. And dying can be oneself or can be the others. So, and all this is a result of the individual processes of believing. And what Rüdiger Seitz yesterday wanted to stress, and he did it with the notion of meaning of life, that we can believe, and now I say believe, as a result of the believing processes, we can believe not only in facts, but we can believe in concepts, and even in superordinate concepts like justice, or you mentioned attitude today, or behavior. All these are concepts, and on a philosophical sense, we experience that there are normally many, at least 3-4 different main strands of how to explain a term. And there's no convergence, and sometimes it's quite difficult. And you mentioned that in different cultures there is in the USA it's like this, and that's all result that we can believe in superordinate concepts. And if that's the case, so it's important to understand Credition, because Credition is relevant for producing or maintaining superordinate concepts. And among these superordinate concepts, extremist behavior and violent behavior might be a concept that gives a meaning to my life. Okay, that's the basic input I wanted to give, and to summarize. What's needed, knowledge about Credition is needed, and this knowledge would be needed to explain more in detail what I want to say. Without having knowledge about it, enough knowledge about Credition, it's somehow hanging in the air. So this knowledge would be a precondition to really understand what I want to say. But first, I have to stimulate interest for what Credition is, because if there's no interest, Credition doesn't exist so far. It was in the scientific discussion, it only dropped in about 15 years ago. Second, knowledge about Credition is needed for any understanding of the emergence of secular beliefs as well as of extremist religious beliefs. So that's one. To understand the emergence of beliefs requires to change the focus from an interest in religion to an interest in religiosity. And to build theories of religiosity is a different field than to build theories about religions. We have a chair of religious studies, and he's my neighbor, and he said, yeah, that's a totally different thing. We do not do it in religious science. We speak about totally different things. The backside, they speak a lot of how to come to religious attitude and so on, but it's not a theory in this. So it's important to have to focus on religiosity, and so maybe as take-home message I can say, the lack of knowledge about Credition and the lack of knowledge about religiosity are two sides of the same coin. And I am very grateful for the invitation, especially to this bridging conference, because I think this bridging conference can give an impulse in two different directions. And you have neuroscience, okay, that's the base for understanding the brain function. And religion, that's the starting point for leaving religion and go to religiosity. Yeah, thanks a lot.